Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Yeah, well, movies get me crazy like that. And I was very affected by Kramer versus Kramer, because I wasn't wanted as a child.
Oh, no.
How
do you know you weren't wanted as a child?
I was not wanted. My mother carried for 18 months on purpose. The woman just didn't want me. 2 weeks after I was born, she tried to have an abortion. I told you this story. It was ugliest child ever born in Larchmont, New York. Doctor looked at my face, looked at my tush, and screamed, twins. It was and they hated me. You know, I had a bassinet with a lightning rod. I mean, it was just terrible. I don't know this. My mother used to test the milk by squirting it in my face.
That's too hot.
Good morning. It's Monday, Moral Monday, October the 27th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, meditation, motivation, and the moral politics. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Welcome back. We're 30 minutes away from the opening bell for a Monday. Let's check markets here. We got a melt up underway. Dow Industrials up another 236. The Nasdaq up 324. Time for the final thoughts from this all-star panel. Ryan Payne.
Well, definitely a thorn between two roses this morning. But look, barring the extended shutdown here with the government, everything looks pretty good. Why wouldn't you invest right now? You have the Fed put. They're going to keep cutting. Earnings are strong. You've got the China deal in place. You've got lower energy prices with disinflationary and GDP growth tracking 3.9%. Pretty good.
And we got those earnings from tech this week as well. Liz Peek.
I'm celebrating in Argentina Milei's win, Maria, against all the odds, and I'm hoping that the odds makers and polls are just as wrong about Mamdani's inevitable win in New York City.
Yeah, and it certainly feels like the Trump administration celebrating Milei as well. Liz Peek, Ryan Payne, great to be with you. Don't miss part 2 of my trip to the Permian Basin tomorrow morning right here in the 8 a.m. hour. Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. There's nothing our viewers like more than to wake up on a Monday morning and see a sea of green. Big smiles, everyone. Stocks up sharply across the board. It's a day of records. At least in the early going. Look at this. Dow Industrials up over 200 points. S&P up 56 points. That's a 0.8%. But the Nasdaq, that's where the action is. Look at that. It's up 1.26% as we speak. Over 300 points. Now, look at big tech. Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta, they all report Wednesday afternoon. Amazon and Apple, they report Thursday. In advance of the official numbers, big tech rallying all across the board, up sharply, every single one of them. Microsoft is up $7. Bitcoin, there's a rally going on there too. $115,000 per coin, moved up over the weekend, staying at 115. Interest rates, well, they're firm. The yield on the 10-year Treasury staying above 4%, and the 2-year right at 3.5%, 351 right now. Now, here's the big news that is helping the markets rally. Treasury Secretary Bessent says he has a substantial framework for trade talks. President Trump meets Xi Jinping Thursday. No details on the framework with China, but it is believed to involve soybeans, rare earths, and TikTok. Earlier today, our president arrived in Tokyo and was formally greeted by the emperor. Later this week, Trump joins Japan's new prime minister. He will also sit down with Asia's business elite. Very busy guy. Politics. AOC and Bernie Sanders joined Zoran Mamdani for a socialist rally in New York. 13,000 people turned out. Mamdani took straight aim at Trump. So did AOC and Bernie. Mamdani looks to be the likely winner, and Hakeem Jeffries, he has finally endorsed him. The left has momentum in the Democrat Party. The Trump ballroom continues to drive the Democrats crazy. They're going to extremes. Congressman Eric Swalwell demands that the 2028 candidates pledge to dismantle the ballroom on day one. Here's another story. Won't go away. The French jewelry heist. 2 arrests today. Both men in their 30s from what's described as a rough part of town. They haven't got the jewels back. The heist is acutely embarrassing for France and comes at a time when the government is on the verge of collapse. Unfortunately for President Emmanuel Macron, the story is not going away anytime soon. Monday, October the 27th, 2025.
And that was Varney and Company. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, some homicide life on the streets.
You're right, it wasn't race. It's lousy radio.
You think?
Yeah.
A man from another country plays his radio. A man from this country plays his. They fight. Another man, another race, doesn't want to hear. He bitches. Woman gets hurt, and then it unravels. All of it. All the pretense, all the rote human connections break down.
So, what are you saying?
I'm saying that it's all right there waiting. Just below the surface. I mean, a radio, an accident, those are just excuses. Those people didn't like McCusker because he was McCusker, because he gave him a hard way to go, and he was angry at that. That's what started this. But those passengers also didn't like that he was white. That's what finished things.
Shades of gray, huh?
Yes. sometimes I get the feeling this city has grown subtle on me. Not better, necessarily. Just subtle.
Welcome home, kiddo.
So that was Homicide Life on the Street episode called Shades of Gray. But the reason I was making note of this was because of what he said in the beginning. You were right. Because these two detectives were having an argument about whether a homicide was caused by racial animosity. The one detective, the one that said you were right, said it was race. The other detective was saying it wasn't race. But the thing is, you rarely hear anybody anymore when somebody gets into an argument to say you're right or you're wrong. Nobody wants to use the R word. Nobody wants to use the W word. And you have to be able to use those words if you're going to have an argument that's going to have a point. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I was having a discussion with a friend of mine the other day. We saw somebody that was obese. I made a comment about that, and my friend starts to scold me because my friend then went ahead and said that this person can't help it. And I said, what do you mean? Of course they can help it. All they have to do is eat less and exercise. And then my friend started continuing to scold me by saying, no, it is the big corporations, the big evil corporations that are inundating this person with advertising that induces them or forces them to overeat and to be sedentary. And I said, well, then what about the rest of us? We all see the same commercials. I don't look like that person. You don't look like that person. Look around. Nobody else that I see looks like that person. And my friend says, oh, but we got lucky. We have better genetics or something like that, but we got lucky. And I said, no, it doesn't work that way. If it is true that we have no free will and we're forced to do everything we do, then there is no such thing as luck. Luck is only for people with free will. Think about it. Back in a minute. And now, motivation.
Life changes every day. Sometimes things will be going your way. Sometimes things work well for you. Sometimes it won't work so well. Sometimes you'll have your health, you're feeling good and energetic, have a yes I can attitude, and there's some things that can happen to you in life that can take all of that from you. All of that can go. Sometimes you might be financially secure, and a sickness, one sickness can wipe out an illness. Life always changes. But you can choose in the midst of all of this that's going on to be happy in spite of it. In the good times and in the bad times. You know, weeds don't have to have any encouragement to grow. You don't have to water them. They don't have to get sunshine. They don't have to have fertile ground. They will grow through the cracks of a sidewalk. But if you want to grow orchids or roses or any kind of exotic flowers, there are special processes and procedures you must go through. Well, by the same token, you don't have to force yourself or motivate yourself to think negatively, to hate somebody, to want revenge, to want to get back at somebody, to beat yourself up over the head, to feel loaded with guilt. You don't have to make any effort to do that. Your mind is on automatic. It will do that by itself. When the challenges of life come your way, stop beating up on yourself. You do it. I know you do it. I've done it. It's a natural inclination for us to put ourselves down. See, we are born negative, I think, in a negative consciousness because we live in a negative world. There's a great deal of negativity out here in this world. But you have got to begin to insulate yourself mentally and spiritually, and don't allow it to penetrate your shield.
Don't let this negative world get to you. Don't let it win.
Stand guard at the door of your mind. Don't let anybody just dump anything they want to in your mental factory.
Because you cannot have a positive life with a negative mindset.
You decide what to listen to, what not to listen to, how much time to give to what.
You have to begin to fortify yourself. You have to begin to consciously monitor your inner conversation and start talking to yourself. Start building yourself up. Sometimes the only good things you will hear about you are the things that you say to you. So I'm saying learn to be your own booster. Start building yourself up. Start encouraging yourself. Start saying, I can do this. I can make this happen. Always strive to get on top in life because it's the bottom that's overcrowded. You don't want to be on the bottom. It's easy to be on the bottom. It doesn't take any effort to be a loser. It doesn't take any motivation, any drive in order to stay down there on a low level. But it calls on everything in you. You have to harness your will to say, I'm going to challenge myself. Sometimes I have to pull myself out of bed and say, come on, Les. I found that the biggest enemy you have to deal with is yourself. That there's no enemy within. The enemy outside can do us no harm. Everybody's like, E.T., man, you're so positive. Everything in your life, man, you just got it going on. I'm a real lion, and with a real lion, you'll never know. You'll never know what's going on in my life because I'm a lion. And under every single circumstance, I'm a lion. When you got a negative attitude, it only destroys you. MJ had the flu and scored, 45, 55 with the flu. That's showing you that he showed up, and the thing that was bothering him, he did not let it bother him. You show up, and you show up with a positive attitude every time. Because when you have a negative attitude, you just messing up what you said you wanted to do. And I love me too much to let me mess me up. Begin to guard your mind against negative programming, like turn off the television. Don't watch the news. If you look at the news, you cannot feel good looking at the news. I mean, it turns your power down. You've got to be conscious of that. Now, if your job depends upon you knowing certain things, let somebody tell you just about those things. But start filtering the stuff you allow to come in your mind.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now an article from The American Thinker by Karen Bresner. When is a war not a war? Pay attention to the use of metaphors.
When is a war not a war? In a speech before the House of Commons on May 13, 1940, referencing the war against Nazi Germany, Winston Churchill stated, "What is our policy? To wage war against a monstrous tyranny, never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime." The Prussian military theorist Karl von Clausewitz once observed that war is the continuation of politics by other means. Various political and moral interpretations exist regarding what constitutes a just war. That usually depends on one's point of view. As the saying goes, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Screen grab of a cartel drug boat. The three powerful outboard motors are a giveaway. What if there were a country that had absorbed the loss of over 100,000 of its citizens each year for several years, and which has done little to address the problem? Would that country not be remiss in its primary duty to protect its own citizens? Well, that country does indeed exist. It is called the United States of America. Last year, over 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses, mostly young people, the vast majority of them from fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate 50 times more powerful than heroin, the components of which are manufactured in China. The compounds are exported to countries such as Mexico, where the drug cartels then combine them to produce fentanyl. After that, the drug is smuggled across the border by land or sea to the U.S. Fentanyl is cheap and easy to produce. Also, there is no growing season, so the profit margin is high. Fentanyl has also been observed masquerading as prescription painkillers, such as OxyContin. Many buyers who purchase these drugs on the street are totally unaware that they are really purchasing fentanyl. The drug is so powerful that a minuscule amount can prove fatal. What we are witnessing is a form of what is called asymmetrical warfare that occurs when a country or group employs surreptitious means to weaken a potential adversary. To understand this, consider that on December 7th, 1941, the United States sustained the loss of over 2,400 dead, a moment that sparked its entry into what became World War II. During the entire course of the Vietnam War, which lasted from 1964 to 1975, almost 60,000 Americans died. Most recently, on September 11th, 2001, nearly 3,000 Americans were killed, which resulted in 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. All of those deaths triggered outrage and strong reactions. By contrast, just last year alone in America, over 100,000 people died from drug overdoses, mostly fentanyl. The Chinese government has so far been unresponsive to American requests to curb the production and export of the components for making fentanyl. If this is not an example of a war being waged against us, then what is? In law enforcement, there are two basic types of policing, reactive and proactive. Reactive policing requires officers to wait until a crime occurs, while proactive policing seeks to prevent crimes from occurring in the first place. Certain states have fought the war on drugs using such weapons as free needles to addicts and drug counseling to those who choose to avail themselves of it. This would be an example of a reactive response. You do not win the war on drugs by adopting a defensive strategy. You win it by taking the offensive strategy against the enemy. Recently, President Trump announced a new policy shift in the war on drugs. In addition to labeling the drug cartels as terrorist organizations, he has ordered the military to hit them where it hurts. This has seen our military destroying boats loaded with illicit drugs in the Atlantic, Pacific, and the Caribbean. The president has also hinted at the possibility of land actions against both the cartels and narco states, such as Venezuela and Colombia. Trump's genius here was to acknowledge that we have not had a war on drugs. Instead, we have had an anti-drug policy, which was all talk and little action. Mainstream media and the Democrat Party predictably went ballistic, claiming that there was no proof of what was on those boats, and that people are being executed without due process. They seem to forget that President Obama authorized more drone strikes than any U.S. president on countries such as Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen, killing thousands of terrorists, but also killing hundreds of civilians, including several American citizens in the process. Obama himself acknowledged some years ago that civilians have been killed who should not have been. What is our objective in this new war on the drug cartels and narco states? Perhaps it can best be summed up by another quotation from that eminent statesman Winston Churchill from the same speech given in the House of Commons on May 13th, 1940. What is our aim? Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival. Trump is taking the war to our enemy, not the Nazis, but against the drug cartels and the narco-state terrorists who are responsible for the deaths of 500,000 or so Americans. It's about time. Karen Besner is a retired teacher who has written articles published by American Thinker, Sun Sentinel, The Algeminer, The Times of Israel, Dr. Rich Swear, published reporter, The Jewish Press, Jerusalem Post, Jewish Journal, Israel Post, The Jewish Voice, Independent Sentinel, San Diego Jewish World, Arutz Shiva, The Front Page, The Florida Veteran, JewTube, The Moderate Voice, and Israel National News.
Thank you. So on this When is a War Not a War article by Karen Besner, war has now become a metaphor. So because you now have wars on all kinds of things. You have wars on terror, war on poverty, you have the war on drugs, you have, and as he had said in the article, acting proactively to prevent something. And that's what all these wars, these metaphorical wars are all about. The fact of the matter is a war exists when Congress says so. When Congress declares war, that's when we have a real war. That's when the president is authorized. Then he can go out and he wants to blow up all these boats coming out of Venezuela, and he wants to tell us, well, those are part of the war. They are soldiers from Venezuela that are trying to attack the United States in some way, shape, or form. Fine. I can. That's great. But today, the way it is now, without a declaration of war, no good. No good. The federal government is not authorized to do this. That's all there is to it. And the federal government has used fictitious wars to justify all kinds of government overreach and to justify government rights and try to claim that the government has a certain right to do certain things in support of a fictitious war, such as the war on terrorism. How many of our rights have been usurped by the federal government in the name of the war on terrorism? The Patriot Act, what a joke. That needs to be repealed immediately. In any case, so he's supporting this war, this metaphorical war, and he shouldn't be, this author is. Because, again, this is the way we end up with the government claiming to have rights that it actually doesn't have. And then we end up in a situation, again, where you end up in court and the judges have to do, quote, balancing tests, balancing the rights of the government versus the rights of the individual. And since the judge is a member of government, usually the federal government, then whose side do you think they're going to come down on? The rights of the individual? No, it's the government that pays them. So they're always going to come down on the side of the government. And that hurts everybody. The fact of the matter is, if we're going to go to war, go to Congress, get a declaration of war against Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, then go out and blow up the drug boats. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Varney about the government shutdown.
The government's been shut down for nearly a month now. Flights are being cancelled, food benefits drying up, and people are not getting paid, not all of them. Chad Pergram joins me now from Capitol Hill. Good question, Chad. Any sign of any Democrats cracking?
No, Stuart, things right now are pretty grim, and that's why the government shutdown hurt is here. Food benefits expire on Saturday. Travel delays are mounting. There was a ground stop yesterday at the airport in Los Angeles. Air traffic controllers are going without paychecks, and this all comes before the holiday travel season.
Okay, so the one thing I wanted to mention here is that Republicans have the ability, because they're in control of the Senate, the Republicans are claiming they need 60 votes in order to be able to pass this continuing resolution, and that's fiction. It's a lie. The Republicans can suspend the rules and pass it with a majority vote if they want to. Why it is that they've decided to play this game, I'm really not sure. I don't understand it at all. Why not just go ahead and pass this continuing resolution and move on with something else? The only thing I can think of is that it's speculative in terms of the 2026 elections, that they figure that somehow this is going to get them some extra votes next November. So, but anyways, the point is Republicans could end this. The Democrats have said this over and over, and they're right. The Republicans could end this any time that they want to. They just go in, suspend the rules, and pass it on majority, pass it with 51 votes. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, moral politics.
Chapter 19. Can there be a politics without family values? Suppose I am right that the divisions in American politics are a reflection of diametrically opposite moral systems, based on radically different models of the family, and suppose I am right in my analysis of those moral systems. Then there are important next questions to be asked. Can political values in America be separated from family values? Is there any way to avoid the application of family values to the political arena? Since metaphorical thought lies behind both literal and conservative politics, is there a way to expel metaphorical thought from politics and from political values? Can political values be separated from family values? The nation is not literally a family. The government is not literally our parent. In real families, there are genetic bonds and bonds of love between parents and children. No such bonds exist between the government and its citizens. Governments are not even people. But the people who run governments have power, life and death power over individual citizens. Democratic institutions have evolved to protect citizens from the abuse of such power. The separation of powers can be seen from our perspective as a way to keep the government from functioning as an authoritarian, strict father. The separation of church and state can be seen as an attempt to insulate our political institutions from the strict father morality of many religions. But morality is by no means absent from democracy. On the contrary, American democratic institutions are based on certain moral schemes, in particular, moral fairness, moral empathy, moral self-interest, the maximization of the self-interest of all. Let us begin with moral fairness. Among the forms of fairness that are institutionalized are equality, impartial rule-based distribution, rights-based fairness, contractual distribution. Equality shows up in the one-man, one-vote electoral laws and in proportional representation in the House of Representatives. Impartial rule-based distribution is the basis of the impartial application of laws. Rights-based fairness is realized in constitutional rights, which the government has a duty to protect, and contractual distribution is realized in the enforcement of contracts. Moral self-interest allows individuals to define what is in their interest in any way they want, with life, liberty, and safety taken for granted as being in one's interest. Moral self-interest presupposes moral fairness in the form of fairness of competition. Metaphor and theoretical liberalism. Though this book is about political liberalism, not modern theoretical liberalism, it is useful to see how modern theoretical liberalism makes implicit conceptual use of the metaphors we have been considering. Let us consider, in very schematic form, John Rawls's theory of justice as fairness. See references C3. Both moral fairness and moral self-interest, as they apply in the setting up of a domestic state, presuppose moral empathy. To see why, consider the question, why would you want the state that you are born into, or that you enter, to be one that is based on moral fairness and moral self-interest, which is moral because it supposedly maximizes the self-interest of everyone? Considering that there are always going to be people who are, in some ways, more powerful than you would not want that power differential to result in your being treated unfairly, or in having your pursuit of your self-interest squelched. In short, you would want other people to treat you the way they would want to be treated. It is moral empathy, putting oneself in other people's shoes, that leads to having a form of democracy based on moral fairness and moral self-interest. And to guarantee that there will in fact be moral fairness and moral self-interest, you have to have the right kinds of institutions and take part in their governance. Thus, even in theoretical liberalism, metaphors for morality from the nurturant-parent model are at the basis of liberal theory. Morality and politics. Democracy is commonly defined and studied by scholars in terms of liberal institutions, like an independent judiciary and civilian control of the military, not in terms of metaphorical moral concepts. Yet the institutions must function in terms of such moral concepts if they are to be considered really democratic. A form of government in which there are so-called democratic institutions, where those institutions do not serve these metaphorical moral schemes, where there is no real self-governance or fairness or moral self-interest, is a hollow democracy at best. Democracy with hollow institutions, institutions that do not realize such moral ideas, is not something worth calling a democracy. In short, any real democracy comes with some form of morality built into it. Is this form of morality really separable from forms of morality based on models of the family? If the answer were yes, one might argue that any form of morality based on ideal family models ought to be kept out of a democracy. This is, however, impossible. There are two ways to see why. First, look at the word ought in ought to be kept out of a democracy. What moral principles govern the use of that ought? For those whose primary moral principles come from some family-based moral model, either a strict father or nurturant parent model, or perhaps some other, there is no higher set of principles. If you believe that your family-based values are all-encompassing, then you will conclude that those values ought not to be kept out of politics. Because there are people, many people, both liberal and conservative, who do believe that their family values are all-encompassing. Those people will never accept some higher morality that restricts their family values to non-political arenas. Second, those family-based values cannot practically be kept out of politics anyway. To see why, consider how moral fairness is to apply to moral self-interest to guarantee fair and unrestrained competition. Conservatives and liberals have two different answers depending on their family values. Liberals are concerned with those disadvantaged initially in competition and will want the state to guarantee fairness by helping them. Conservatives will reply that that is coddling. It is bleeding heart liberalism that supports moral weakness. Instead, they will want to avoid all government interference in competition. There is no neutral answer here. Non-family-based morality, if there is such a thing, just doesn't cover the hard cases, which are most cases. It is family-based morality that gives case-by-case answers in a detailed enough fashion so that one can have policy goals. Suppose we wanted to separate family-based morality from politics. Suppose we all wanted to have the state set up according to general principles of abstract, non-family-based democratic morality, and that we wanted to keep family-based morality non-political. That would be impossible to carry out in practice. The nation as family metaphor will carry family values over into politics whenever those family values are seen as politically relevant. There is no higher, generally accepted moral or political principle to exclude family values from politics, and there is as well no practical way to exclude them. Is there a metaphor-free conception of government? If one is disturbed by the use of the nation as family metaphor, whether in conservative or in liberal discourse, one might ask whether there are alternative, non-family-based metaphors for politics, or even whether it is possible to have a metaphor-free conception of government. The government is an organization. What kind of an organization is it, or should it be? There is a very long answer to this question, but the short answer is this. Governments have armies and judicial systems, and so governments have in part been modeled metaphorically as armies or as judicial systems. Thus, the American government has a top-to-bottom chain of command, as in an army. It also has a judicial structure in place, with clerks and administrators serving as judges, deciding claims brought by citizens according to existing law. In addition, the American government is conceptualized as a business, which is to be run efficiently and not lose money. In recent years, questions have arisen as to what kind of business it should be. 20th century American bureaucracy was based on an industrial business, a kind of factory model, with bureaucrats as factory managers. This was seen as a way to reform the previous government, which ran largely on political patronage and favoritism. The industrial bureaucracy model was instituted in the late 19th and early 20th century as a reform. To minimize corruption, a system of rules and a staff of civil servants were put in place so as to make government as impartial and efficient as possible. At the time, factories were seen as models of efficiency. Impersonality was seen as a virtue, replacing favoritism and corruption. The breakdown of the industrial model of governmental organization has been written about at great length in the literature on reinventing government, especially Reinventing Government by David Osborne and Ted Gabler, and Breaking Through Bureaucracy by Michael Barzilay. The present wisdom has been to replace the industrial metaphor, keeping the government as business metaphor, but making it a different kind of business, one specializing in customer service. Taxes, from this perspective, are seen as payments for services rendered to the public, and the impersonality of the factory-like bureaucracy is to be replaced by a more personal form of service. The government is seen from this perspective as just selling its services to the public for tax money. According to this view, there is no morality in government, just services for sale. When government is framed in that way, it would seem not to have a moral function. It then becomes a practical, not a moral question as to whether a particular government agency works better than private enterprise. Government as a service industry becomes subject to cost-benefit analysis. Under this model, if the private sector can do a better job, then it should. Let us take as examples two very different cases. First, take Michael Barzilay's example, 1992, of the state of Minnesota motor pool. This is a perfect example of the government as service industry concept. The job of the pool is to provide cars to state officials for the performance of state functions. There is no issue of morality here, just one of efficient operation. If the state motor pool cannot provide better and cheaper service than Hertz and Avis, then it should go out of business. So far, so good. But compare this with the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA has not just a practical mission, but a moral mission. Safeguarding the environment, which includes choosing a moral view of the environment. There is no neutral view of the environment. There are only moral views of the sort we discussed in Chapter 12. The EPA's job is not merely to carry out morally neutral functions like measuring air pollution. Its very function is a moral one. Its regulations, its forms of testing, its research projects, and its sanctions all come out of a moral vision. Parts of its job could be farmed out to the private sector, but its overall job could not, because the market does not incorporate inherent values, such as the inherent value of nature that emerges from the nurturant parent model. It is at points like this that family-based morality enters crucially into government. Many parts of government have functions that are not morally neutral. Those functions cannot be done just as well by private industry, where it is the bottom line, not morality, that matters. For all such cases, government is not just involved in the sale of services for tax money. Instead, the mission of the agency is moral, and its success must be judged in significant part on moral grounds, not cost-benefit grounds. It is the moral mission of the EPA that offends conservatives. The same is true of the moral missions of the arts and humanities endowments. One of the reasons that conservatives are offended by large segments of the federal government is that those aspects of government have a moral function that does not square with their morality. Take public schools, for example. Our public schools have been shaped by a moral function. They don't just teach the 3 R's. They teach how to understand our moral life, our history, our politics, and our culture. Public schools have been seen as having a moral mission to create informed, open-minded, questioning citizens. Their job is not just to teach what is officially sanctioned, say, some officially sanctioned form of U.S. history that hides all the dark and controversial sides of our history. The most crucial part of the job of public schools is to produce independent, informed, questioning citizens. That has been seen as the most important part of their moral mission. This mission is not independent of family-based morality. Conservatives disagree with that moral mission. It contradicts strict father morality. What is an open history to liberal educators is a negative history to conservatives. An open history that discusses negative episodes will include criticisms of the functioning of all forms of morality in American history, including the functioning of strict father morality. For example, it might include earlier and harsher versions of the strict father family, in which children were property who could be sold into indentured servitude or put to work in factories at an early age, and in which wives were seen as chattel. It would certainly include an account of the women's suffrage movement and how it was fought by advocates of traditional strict father family life. By the principle of self-defense, strict father morality must be defended at all costs. It must not be subject to criticism in the schools. That would be immoral from its perspective. Hence, any history that puts it in a bad light is negative. In addition, many conservatives have a version of the moral order metaphor in which the U.S. ranks higher in the moral order than any other nation, and so has more moral authority than any other nation. An open or negative history of the U.S. shows that the U.S. has not acted morally at all times, and that there is much about the morality of our country that could stand improvement. From a liberal perspective, it is good for our country and for our children to think about how the country might be improved morally. But such benefits of an open history cannot be seen as benefits by those who see the U.S. at the top of the moral order of nations. From that perspective, anything negative, anything that presents less than a pristine image, questions the legitimacy of American moral authority. There is still another reason for conservatives to be against what they see as a negative history. If conservative politics rests on strict father morality, the national family must be seen as a moral family, and the rules by which the national family operates must be seen as moral. Otherwise, the legitimacy of all forms of governmental authority is called into question. The very foundation of strict father morality is the legitimacy of parental authority. To someone raised with strict father morality, a negative history might call into question that authority. Strict father morality cannot tolerate the questioning of legitimate authority by children. Children are supposed to venerate and idolize legitimate authorities, so that they can develop character by following the rules laid down by that authority. Negative history, conservatives believe, would lead to questioning authority and would threaten that process. Of course, none of this holds in nurturant parent morality, where openness, questioning, and facing one's dark side are virtues. The virtue of the teaching of history to children, not as veneration, but as honest, tough-minded inquiry, is a liberal view. Nurturant parent morality requires open, honest communication, questioning, and explanations. Conservatives are correct that an open/negative U.S. history curriculum fits a liberal moral vision. Liberals are correct that a goody-goody U.S. history is not only inaccurate, but fits a conservative moral vision. Conservatives have called for a history that is acceptable to all Americans. That means it must be acceptable to conservatives, which in turn means it cannot contain anything that either 1. Questions strict father morality itself, or 2. Questions the idea that the U.S. has more moral authority than any other nation, or 3. Questions the moral legitimacy of the U.S. government. There seems to be no way around it. American politics is suffused with family-based morality. When it comes to specifying policy goals, family-based morality is going to enter in a big way. Family values are going to matter. The question is, which family values?
And that was Chapter 19 of Moral Politics, How Liberals and Conservatives Think by George Lakoff. He says how conservatives think, but he doesn't know because he's not a conservative, never has been. He can tell us how liberals think, and that's basically what this book is about. What apparently, obviously, liberals think is that morals are something that are an artificial construct that are just made up by conservatives for whatever reason. He says that when you go to school, that the school teaches morals. No, they don't. What they do is they teach arithmetic and all the other subjects and reinforce morals. They reinforce the idea that you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't cheat, you should be on time, you shouldn't be late, you should listen to the teacher. It's basically a reinforcement of hierarchy, basically. The parents are the ones that are going to, quote, teach their children morals. But what the parents are really doing is revealing morals to their children. And the rest of the community, including the school, are simply reinforcing those morals, so that everywhere the child goes, the child knows and understands that morals exist and that morals are important. Now, he indicates or suggests that there are left-wing morals and right-wing morals. No, just morals. We all have the same morals. We have to. You cannot live in a society with dueling morals. It just doesn't work. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.